The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the sprawling fields that had been in the protagonist's family for generations. This land was more than mere soil and grass, it was a tapestry of memories, woven with laughter and tears. Countless summers were spent wandering through the wildflower-studded meadows, where each bloom held a story of its own. This property had become a sanctuary, an escape from the world's chaos and a connection to their roots. Inherited from a beloved grandparent, the land was a symbol of continuity and familial love. Every tree had been planted with care, every fence mended with intent. As a child, the protagonist would often sit under the old oak tree, listening to tales of their ancestors who cultivated the very ground they now cherished. The property felt alive, a testament to resilience and hard work, embodying dreams that spanned decades. Yet, as time marched forward, this haven found itself at risk. The local homeowners association, HOA, driven by ambition and profit-driven motives, had set its sights on transforming this cherished space into an industrial hub, a factory that would alter not only the landscape but also the fabric of community life. The protagonist stood at a crossroads, the threat to their land ignited a fierce resolve deep within. This impending invasion felt like not just an assault on land but an attack on identity itself. The protagonist knew they had to fight, not merely for ownership but for what their family had built over generations. As frustration bubbled beneath the surface, it became clear that this struggle wasn't just about retaining physical space, it represented preserving history and honor against overwhelming odds. Thus began a journey that would test resourcefulness and courage, setting into motion plans that would intertwine fate with unexpected relationships, beginning with none other than the charming HOA representative who thought she could take it all away. The news hit like a lightning bolt. The announcement from the local homeowners association, HOA, regarding plans to build a factory on the protagonist's cherished land left them reeling. It wasn't just a piece of property up for redevelopment, it felt like a deeply personal betrayal. How could an organization that was supposed to serve the community suddenly turn against one of its own? The disbelief transformed into anger as the implications of this decision set in. A factory would not only disrupt the tranquility of their sanctuary but also reshape the entire neighborhood. Visions of machinery clanking and smoke billowing floated ominously through their mind, overshadowing cherished memories of childhood adventures and family gatherings. The protagonist stood at the edge of the field, staring into the horizon where endless possibilities had once thrived. Instead, a future filled with concrete and noise loomed ahead, threatening to erase generations of family history. Each inhale felt heavy with disappointment. This land was meant to nurture life, not suffocate it. Friends and neighbors echoed similar sentiments, expressing outrage and disbelief at the HOA's disregard for community values. Meetings were called, each echoing with frustrated voices. The protagonist listened intently, absorbing stories of others who shared similar attachments to their properties, homes that held dreams, love, and legacy. Yet, among this shared grief emerged a desire for action. They needed to fight back. Feeling galvanizing energy surge within, the protagonist began brainstorming ways to oppose the HOA's plans. After all, they were not just defending land, they were protecting a sense of identity and belonging. Resolute determination blossomed as thoughts of negotiation flooded their mind, a way to turn this betrayal into an opportunity for reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. Little did they know that navigating this conflict would lead them down an unexpected path intertwined with both challenge and romance. Amidst the mounting tension in the community, the figure of the HOA representative emerged as both a beacon of hope for some and a harbinger of doom for others. Her name was Clara Hart, and she possessed an undeniable charisma that could light up a room. With her polished demeanor and sharp wit, she captivated those around her, effortlessly weaving through conversations and disarming critics with a disarming smile. Yet beneath this charming facade lay a cunning strategist who knew how to manipulate situations to her advantage. Clara's ambition was palpable. She envisioned transforming the neighborhood into a modern hub of prosperity, believing that progress often came at the expense of nostalgia. She thrived on the idea that change was essential, using persuasive rhetoric to rally support among residents who were swayed by her vision of growth and opportunity. Many found her enthusiasm infectious, drawn in by her ability to frame even the most controversial plans as beneficial for the community. However, not everyone was enamored by Clara's charm. The protagonist sensed an underlying ruthlessness in her approach, an eagerness to bulldoze through objections without regard for personal stories or histories attached to the land. This realization fueled their resolve. They understood that challenging Clara meant going up against someone not only skilled in persuasion but also adept at bending rules to suit her goals. As the protagonist prepared for the upcoming HOA meetings, they recognized that navigating this conflict meant understanding Clara's game. They would have to match her cleverness with their own strategies while holding on to their principles. Little did they know that this clash would not only test their abilities but also lead them into uncharted emotional territory. As Clara became more than just an adversary, she became a complex figure entangled in their fight for what mattered most. With resolve burning in their chest, the protagonist knew that merely opposing Clara's plans wouldn't be enough. They needed a strategy that could captivate her interest and turn the tables in their favor. As the days passed, they began crafting a clever plan that would not only challenge the HOA's agenda but also draw Clara into a web of intrigue. The idea struck during a late-night brainstorming session, fueled by coffee and determination. What if they organized an event that showcased the rich history and beauty of their land? A community gathering would provide an opportunity for residents to share stories, reminisce about cherished memories, and celebrate the landscape that meant so much to them. The protagonist envisioned an engaging festival complete with local food vendors, music, and activities for children, an event designed to remind everyone of what was at stake. But this wasn't just about nostalgia, it was a strategic maneuver aimed directly at Clara. By inviting her as a guest of honor, the protagonist could leverage her charismatic nature against her ambitions. They planned to highlight the community's strong emotional ties to the land, hoping to appeal to Clara's sense of community while subtly undermining her factory proposal. It was a gamble, but one that could pay off if executed well. As preparations kicked into high gear, the protagonist focused on creating an irresistible invitation for Clara, a beautifully crafted letter that emphasized her influential role in shaping the community's future. They infused it with warmth and enthusiasm, making it difficult for her to decline without appearing dismissive or indifferent. This calculated charm became their weapon of choice. The protagonist immersed themselves in planning details, ensuring every aspect of the event would shine brightly enough to attract not just Clara's attention but also sway public opinion. Little did they know that this elaborate plan would set off a chain reaction of events leading them deeper into both conflict and unexpected connections, a dance between strategy and attraction that neither had anticipated. The day of the community festival arrived, vibrant with the sounds of laughter and music, transforming the familiar landscape into a lively celebration. The protagonist watched with pride as families gathered, their collective nostalgia hanging in the air like sweet summertime. Yet amidst the joy, their focus remained sharp. Clara Hart was due to arrive at any moment. When Clara finally stepped onto the scene, her presence commanded attention. Clad in a stylish blazer that contrasted against the casual atmosphere, she immediately drew a crowd. The protagonist seized the opportunity, approaching her with confidence and charm. "Clara. I'm so glad you could make it," they said, their voice warm yet tinged with an undercurrent of playfulness. "I think you'll find today quite enlightening." As they walked through the festival together, the protagonist engaged Clara with stories filled with humor and heart, tales of summer picnics under the old oak tree and spirited neighborhood games that had taken place on this very land. Clara listened intently, her initial skepticism softening as she responded with witty banter of her own. The ease between them began to shift dynamics. It was no longer just a fight over land, it was a conversation about community and belonging. Their exchange became a dance of words, each subtly leading the other toward new perspectives. The protagonist skillfully highlighted the emotional significance of the land while deftly planting seeds of doubt regarding her factory plans. With every laugh they shared, Clara seemed more receptive, her defenses lowering just enough to spark a glimmer of empathy. As the day progressed, the protagonist found themselves captivated by Clara's intelligence and ambition, which mirrored their own passion for preserving the land. What began as a mere tactic to manipulate circumstances blossomed into a genuine connection that complicated their motives. In that moment, they realized that this battle was no longer solely about winning, it involved understanding and possibly bridging the gap between their worlds, igniting feelings that neither had expected amidst such turmoil. As the days passed after the festival, the protagonist found themselves caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The initial thrill of connection with Clara Hart had morphed into a complex mix of admiration and conflict. Every time they recalled her laughter or the spark in her eyes as they discussed their shared love for the land, an undeniable warmth spread through them. Yet, this newfound affection felt like a betrayal to their cause. They were supposed to be adversaries, not allies. Each encounter with Clara became a balancing act, where their personal feelings clashed with their commitment to reclaiming their family's legacy. At community meetings, the protagonist would watch her present her case for the factory, her passion evident as she spoke about progress and opportunity. Part of them wanted to support her vision of growth, after all, she was driven and intelligent. However, that part was quickly overshadowed by the memory of what was truly at stake, their land, their history. In private moments, when they allowed themselves to reflect, the protagonist's heart raced at the thought of Clara's captivating presence. They found themselves daydreaming about more than just strategies and negotiations, they imagined exploring the meadows together, sharing dreams under starlit skies. But guilt crept in like an unwelcome shadow. How could they entertain such thoughts while fighting against her plans? The tension became palpable as they prepared for an upcoming HOA meeting where Clara would present further developments on the factory proposal. The protagonist knew they needed to remain focused on their ultimate goal, yet every interaction with Clara seemed to blur those lines. As they rehearsed their arguments and crafted counterpoints, a nagging question lingered: could they truly fight against someone who had become a source of inspiration? Determined to regain control over their land, the protagonist resolved to harness their feelings into a strength rather than a distraction. They would confront Clara not only as an opponent but also as someone who challenged them in ways they had never anticipated. The battle ahead promised to be fierce, but so too did the emotions it stirred within them, an unexpected intertwining of love and resolve that neither had foreseen. With the upcoming HOA meeting looming, the protagonist strategized ways to mislead Clara while maintaining the facade of cooperation. They understood that the more they could weave a web of intrigue, the more they could manipulate the situation to their advantage. Inspired by their previous encounters, where personal connections blurred the lines of conflict, the protagonist began crafting a plan that would both distract and confuse Clara. In casual conversation with other residents, they started circulating rumors about potential alternative projects that could utilize the land effectively without turning it into a factory. The protagonist spoke of creating a community park and an artisan market, planting these seeds in both Clara's and the neighborhood's minds. Each time they encountered her, they would mention these plans casually, allowing her to absorb them as genuine ideas. This tactic was intended to divert Clara's attention away from her factory proposal and create doubt about its viability. Meanwhile, the protagonist maintained a friendly demeanor during their ongoing interactions with Clara, inviting her for coffee under the guise of discussing community engagement strategies. They carefully navigated conversations, sharing insights that made it seem as if they were allied on some level. However, every suggestion they made aimed to draw her interest away from the factory plans and toward projects that underscored community spirit. In one particularly telling meeting, while discussing plans for enhancing community spaces, Clara's enthusiasm started to wane as she absorbed what felt like competing priorities. The protagonist noticed this shift and pressed further, subtly challenging her ambitions without direct confrontation. As the meetings progressed, both business and personal interactions began to intertwine intricately. While Clara remained intrigued by the protagonist's charm and ideas, she grew increasingly aware that her path was not as straightforward as initially anticipated. Each encounter left her questioning not only her agenda but also her feelings toward the very person who was complicating everything. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog, neither was fully prepared for where this intricate game might lead them next. As the protagonist navigated this intricate dance with Clara, their internal conflict deepened, gnawing at them like a persistent whisper. Each encounter that once served to advance their cause now felt tainted by an unexpected warmth that threatened to undermine their original intentions. Clara's laughter lingered in their mind long after their conversations ended, and her passionate defense of her vision for progress began to resonate in ways they couldn't quite ignore. One evening, while staring out at the sprawling fields bathed in twilight, the protagonist wrestled with the weight of their emotions. They had come to see Clara not merely as an antagonist but as a kindred spirit, someone who shared a fierce love for community and ambition. Yet, how could they reconcile these growing feelings with the fight for their family land? Was it possible that this affection could lead them astray, blurring the lines between ally and enemy? The protagonist found themselves oscillating between admiration and guilt. They understood that any hint of personal affection might weaken their argument against the factory proposal, allowing Clara to wield their feelings as leverage. In their heart, they knew that Clara was capable of seeing the nuances in their position. Would she view this emotional struggle as a sign of weakness? Days turned into sleepless nights filled with contemplation. They drafted speeches laced with conviction yet felt hollow when addressing Clara directly. Each time they rehearsed scenarios where they confronted her about the factory plans, a flicker of doubt crept in. What if she understood them better than they desired? What if she saw through the guise of manipulation and recognized genuine emotion behind it? With every choice made to mislead or distract her from her agenda, worry crept further into the corners of the protagonist's mind. Would pursuing this connection ultimately compromise their fight? As tension built within them, they resolved to stay focused on their goal while simultaneously recognizing the complicated layers of humanity emerging in their relationship with Clara. The path ahead promised challenges both fierce and unexpected, a battle not just for land but for what it meant to navigate love and conflict intertwined. As the day of the crucial HOA meeting arrived, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The protagonist had prepared diligently, armed with their carefully crafted arguments against the factory proposal and fueled by a desire to protect their family's land. However, just as they were about to solidify their plans, a sudden wave of complications crashed over them like an unexpected storm. Clara entered the room looking every bit the confident leader, her demeanor radiating professionalism. Yet, what should have been a straightforward discussion took a sharp turn when another member of the HOA unveiled a last-minute report proposing a revised timeline for the factory development, one that had been kept secret until now. This revelation threw the protagonist into disarray. They hadn't anticipated such a maneuver and it threatened to undermine every effort they had made. As Clara articulated her support for this new timeline, her eyes scanning the room filled with hesitant nods and murmurs of agreement, the protagonist felt their hearts sink. What had begun as an opportunity for dialogue now felt more like a battleground where Clara and their connection stood at odds. The warmth they'd shared at the festival seemed like another lifetime. Now, she was poised to drive home her agenda with newfound authority. Amidst rising frustration, personal emotions surged within the protagonist. They glanced at Clara defending her position with passion. How could they reconcile feelings of admiration with standing against her ambitions? The internal conflict became palpable as memories from their conversations intertwined with this moment of confrontation. Could they genuinely oppose someone who had come to represent not just a challenge but also an unexpected bond? As tension mounted in the room, voices grew louder, and Clara's persuasive rhetoric began winning over skeptical members of the board. The protagonist realized that if they didn't act quickly to disrupt this momentum, their fight for land, and everything it represented, might slip through their fingers forever. In that critical moment, they faced an agonizing choice. Should they expose their vulnerability in hopes of swaying Clara or stand resolute in opposition? The stakes had never been higher, and as emotions clashed with ambition, the protagonist braced themselves for a confrontation that would irrevocably reshape both their futures. As the dust settled from the heated HOA meeting, the resolution of the conflict began to take shape. In an unexpected twist, Clara, moved by the protagonist's impassioned defense and the support from the community, proposed a compromise during a private conversation. Instead of pushing forward with the factory plans, she suggested collaborating on a mixed-use development that would incorporate elements of community spirit, like parks and artistic spaces, while also allowing for necessary commercial growth. The protagonist, initially taken aback, realized that this compromise could serve both their interests. While it wouldn't fully protect the land from development, it offered a way to preserve its essence while ensuring progress. Clara's willingness to consider the community's voice reflected a softer side to her ambition, one that had started to resonate with the protagonist on a deeper level. Over time, as plans for the new development unfolded, the protagonist found ways to infuse their family's history into the project. With Clara's help, they organized events that celebrated local folklore and heritage, transforming their original fight into something beautifully collaborative. The protagonist discovered a shared passion with Clara for blending the old with the new, forging an unexpected partnership that went beyond mere strategy. As their professional relationship deepened, so too did their personal connection. The boundaries that once seemed so clear began to blur. What started as animosity slowly transformed into camaraderie and respect. Clara's charisma now felt like a formidable ally rather than a competitor, creating a dynamic that fostered mutual admiration. In this resolution, the protagonist learned that compromise does not equate to defeat. Instead of losing their home to industrialization, they helped shape a vision that honored its legacy while allowing for growth. Ultimately, as they stood side by side with Clara at the ceremonial groundbreaking for their joint venture, they embraced the fact that love and conflict could coexist in ways they never imagined. Together, they were set to embark on a new chapter, not just for the land but for themselves as well, blending aspirations and affection into a shared future. In the aftermath of their journey, the protagonist reflected on the lessons learned through the tumultuous interplay of manipulation, love, and conflict resolution. The experience had illustrated the complexities of power dynamics within relationships, how ambition can drive individuals apart while also drawing them together in unexpected ways. What began as a fierce battle over land transformed into a nuanced partnership that challenged preconceived notions about adversaries. Navigating their initial strategy of deceit, the protagonist came to understand the thin line between manipulation and genuine influence. Although they had aimed to mislead Clara for what they believed was a noble cause, they quickly learned that authenticity held greater power than subterfuge. The connection forged through honest conversations ultimately shifted Clara's perspective and enabled them to find common ground. It became clear that vulnerability, rather than manipulation, was a far more effective means of fostering collaboration. The evolution of their relationship raised questions about personal integrity. The protagonist grappled with their feelings for Clara amidst their commitment to fighting for heritage. It forced them to confront the ethics of emotional entanglement in a struggle centered on preserving identity. They learned that love and conflict often coexist, creating intricate layers within any relationship. As they stood together at the groundbreaking ceremony for their mixed-use development, surrounded by community members who shared in this new vision, the protagonist felt a sense of fulfillment. This endeavor was not simply about safeguarding history, it was about building a future that respected the past while embracing change. Their journey had illuminated that true strength lies not only in determination but also in the capacity to adapt to circumstances and collaborate meaningfully. Ultimately, the protagonist emerged from this experience not merely as a defender of their family land but as someone who recognized the importance of connection over conflict, realizing that sometimes, amidst rivalry and ambition, love can lead to remarkable resolutions that honor both personal integrity and community spirit. As the dust settled on their shared endeavor, the future implications for both the protagonist and Clara began to unfold like the new sprouts in the garden they had decided to cultivate together. Their journey through conflict and cooperation had left indelible marks on their perspectives regarding ambition, love, and ownership. For the protagonist, what had once been a fierce and solitary struggle transformed into a collective effort that reinvigorated their connection to the community. They understood now that ownership wasn't merely about land, it was about nurturing relationships and fostering a sense of belonging. With Clara by their side, they envisioned a space that honored both the past and future, one that celebrated memories while inviting innovation. This realization reshaped their ambitions. They were no longer just defending what was theirs but also cultivating a shared vision for growth that included everyone. Clara, too, emerged from this journey changed. Initially driven by ambition alone, she learned the power of collaboration and empathy. The experience taught her that true progress comes from engaging with community voices rather than overlooking them in pursuit of personal goals. What began as an adversarial relationship with the protagonist evolved into one marked by mutual respect and understanding. Clara found herself rethinking her approach to leadership, recognizing that success is sweeter when achieved through inclusivity rather than division. Together, they stood ready to face future challenges, not just as allies in development but as partners in life. This dynamic shift allowed them to embrace the complexities of love intertwined with ambition. They realized that navigating personal relationships within professional contexts could lead to greater fulfillment than they ever imagined. As they looked ahead, both understood that their collaboration would be an ongoing journey, one filled with the promise of deeper connections, evolving aspirations, and a shared commitment to preserving the essence of their cherished land while allowing it to flourish anew.